As each day passes, the UK's epidemic control strategy looks increasingly different to what the rest of the world is doing. Notably, events that generate big crowds have not been banned. Today, the government's top scientist has defended this strategy, insisting cancellations may be eye-catching, but they're not that useful.
If you look at what other countries have done, some of them have jumped very quick on some measures which actually may be slightly less effective and aren't concentrating on the ones that really are the most impactful. And they're sort of easy ones to go for because it sort of sounds logical that stopping a mass event is going to be a big way to stop this. In fact, it's a small way to stop it.
The aim of controlling the epidemic is to ease pressure on the health service. Hospitals will only have so much capacity to care for those who become seriously ill, and if the virus spreads quickly, the sharp spike in those needing hospital care will overwhelm the NHS. The measures the government plans should reduce the size of that peak by 1/2 to 2/3 and make it last around a month longer.
One thing's for sure is if you get a big peak over a short period of time, then that swamps any healthcare system in the world. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Other countries have used much stricter measures than we have to try to flatten their epidemic curves, from China's forced quarantine to Italy's draconian restrictions on people's movements. But there is a fine line to tread, because if the measures to slow the virus's spread are too heavy-handed and the epidemic peak is pushed down too much, once restrictions are lifted, infections could accelerate again as we approach winter, when the health service is always under pressure and less able to cope.
When you suppress a disease like this to zero, or very close to that, it just pops back up again.
Do you think other countries are risking that with the stricter
There
measures?
is a possibility. I think people are worried about that. It's certainly something that people think is a real possibility.
If the government's models are accurate, the impact of the first epidemic wave can be dampened and a second wave prevented. But that ultimately depends on everyone following the advice the government issues. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Well, let's speak to our health correspondent, Catherine Jones, who, as you can see, joins me now. So, Catherine, gosh, this is becoming quite fast-moving. We've also had an update from the World Health Organization on this pandemic.
That's right. The head of the World Health Organization now says Europe, not China, is the epicentre of the world's coronavirus pandemic. And that is because when you add together the cases in the UK, in Italy, in Spain, in particular, and as we've just heard at the moment, France, Germany, there are more cases now every day here in Europe than there were at the height of the epidemic in China, based around Wuhan. The WHO also announced today 5,000 people have lost their lives globally, describing it as a tragic milestone.
So there have been plenty of developments today. What are we going to expect in the next few weeks, in the next few days?
Well, yes, I mean, that key new piece of advice that we've all got to start following, which is to stay at home for 7 days if you get a new cough or a temperature. And much as the government's response has been criticised, Sir Patrick Vallance was keen to stress to me today that is quite a big intervention. And if you think about it, you know, come Monday morning, all the people phoning in sick, that's going to have a big implication for employers. And the self-employed, of course, are now having to make a decision between putting the public good ahead of their own earnings. Looking ahead to next week, I think we will really start to feel the impact as the NHS starts to really ramp up its preparations. So, for example, if you have an operation scheduled for perhaps April, May and June, do prepare yourself for the potential that a letter will fall on your doormat saying that it has been postponed. I think it's abundantly clear now that it will all be down to us to play our part to try to manage this epidemic wave as it does start to sweep across the UK.
OK, Catherine, with the latest on all of this. Thank you.